Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Mank, which is directed by David Fincher, written by his late father Jack Fincher, and stars Gary Oldman as Herman Mankiewicz, who is the co-writer of Citizen Kane along with Orson Welles, and is also the grandfather to Turner Classic Movie host Ben Mankiewicz. The movie is about Herman Mankiewicz, as I mentioned, played by Gary Oldman, as he goes through this lengthy writing process to write Citizen Kane, and it also details some elements of his career in Hollywood and just really the type of person that he is. So basically, it's a movie about one of the people responsible for Citizen Kane, but told and presented in a way that feels like another Citizen Kane. So this is a movie that's actually been in development hell since the 90s. David Fincher originally wanted to make this movie after he completed the game, and his father wrote the screenplay, and he originally wanted Kevin Spacey and Jodie Foster to star in the movie. Which nowadays, I'm so grateful that Kevin Spacey isn't in this role, but the movie just never got off the ground at the time. Jack Fincher eventually passed away in 2003, and then many years later, leading up to now, David Fincher has finally been able to make that movie, and usually when it comes to a movie that's been in the back burner of a director's mind, or even just a creative's mind for a long time, usually I get a little nervous just because it could easily be bad. Like, it could be one of those things that just were good back in the day, but never really worked out. But David Fincher, with the exception of Alien 3, which wasn't his fault, has always proven himself to be an A-class director. And with Mank, not only is this another fantastic movie from Fincher, but it also feels quite different from what Fincher has made beforehand. And the biggest area in terms of this being very distant from his other films is the way that it looks, and just the overall filmmaking. This movie looks absolutely gorgeous, from its cinematography, production design, costumes, and just the way it's made. When you watch this movie, not only does it feel very distant from a lot of David Fincher's other movies, not only does this movie look and feel very different from all the other movies Fincher has done, but you can also tell that there was a lot of attention to detail when making this movie. From the production design, the cinematography, the costumes, to even the sound design, everyone involved with this movie had to basically learn how to make movies like they were made back in the 30s and 40s, because it has this very distinct look that feels like it's something straight out of the 1930s or 40s. I mean, with a few exceptions. First of all, the widescreen aspect ratio, the fact that you have people like Gary Oldman, Amanda Seyfried, and Charles Dance in the movie, and Lily Collins. But it looks very authentic. When I first saw stills of this movie, I thought to myself, is this from an old Hollywood movie that I've never seen? Then I realized, oh no, this is from a new movie that's coming out this year. And another element of this movie that really makes it feel like a movie from the 30s or 40s is the sound design. When you hear the characters speak, or just any of the sound effects in this film, it doesn't feel crisp and it doesn't feel as clear as movies today. It feels like they're using a mono track, and again, it's meant to replicate a movie that was made back in the day. The only other movie that I can think of that even comes close to this level of detail when it comes to replicating an era of Hollywood was The Artist. That was a different style because it was trying to replicate old silent films, whereas Mank is trying to replicate movies that were made around the time Citizen Kane was made. And that's probably the main reason why I love this movie, just the overall care and detail that went into making it. For my money, I think The Artist is a slightly better movie just because the story was, while familiar, more interesting and more compelling. It did have that one moment in the movie where the theme from Vertigo starts playing, and you're taken out of the movie. Fortunately, Mank doesn't have anything like that. It's very authentic, it's very real, it's its own thing. And another aspect that really surprised me was the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. The reason it surprised me so much is because the scores that they've done for Fincher's other movies feel very dark, feel very electronic, and this movie's score feels very bombastic. It's a very different type of score compared to what they've done beforehand, and it totally works in my opinion. This is probably my favorite score of the year. And then the performances are spectacular. You know Gary Oldman is always going to deliver in whatever movie he's in, even if he's wearing a ridiculous beehive hair wig like in Dracula. But as Herman Mankiewicz, he's very good, and he very much is an interesting character, to say the least. And it really does feel like a Citizen Kane type of movie, except this time it's more, I guess, of a biopic than Citizen Kane was. Because if you know anything about Citizen Kane, then you know the character that Orson Welles is playing is based off of William Randolph Hearst, whereas Herman Mankiewicz was actually a real guy. And to be honest, I don't know that much about the history of Herman Mankiewicz. All I know is that he did co-write Citizen Kane, and he did write Wizard of Oz, which he didn't get credited for, which they make abundantly clear in this movie. So I don't quite know how accurate this is to the real Herman Mankiewicz, but it definitely makes for an interesting watch. The rest of the cast is fantastic, even if these actors don't appear as frequently as you would think. Amanda Seyfried plays Marion Davis, and she's great in the movie. And more than anyone else in this movie, she feels like she belongs in this particular era. Charles Dance plays William Randolph Hearst, and he's really good as well. But the one actress in the movie that really surprised me was Lily Collins as Herman Mankiewicz's secretary. Not only is she good, but she also has an interesting story of her own, and her character's dynamic between Herman Mankiewicz is actually really good. There's a nice little relationship between these two characters. And to be honest, more than anything, it felt like the heart of the movie was in the relationship between these two, more than just Herman Mankiewicz himself. I'd say it's a near-perfect movie, but there is one thing in the movie that just doesn't sit right with me, and maybe it's a nitpick, but for somebody who's a big film history nerd, this just kind of bugged me. Without spoiling anything, I won't say what exactly it is that bugged me, but there's a scene in this movie that takes place during a certain period of time that the movie actually dates. There's a line of dialogue that a character delivers about two types of movies and a certain studio that made these movies that doesn't really line up in terms of historical accuracy. And again, maybe it's a nitpick, but it's just something that I saw and went, hold up, that's incorrect. That's blatantly incorrect. And I might need to go back and rewatch it just to make sure I wasn't crazy. But right now, that little element bugged me, but I'm not really sure if it's going to bug anyone else. Because honestly, Mank is fantastic. I don't know how the Oscars are going to go this year because of the way this pandemic's been going on, the fact that movies kept getting delayed. There's just a new way to approach these types of releases or for your consideration areas, but I feel like that this is the movie that the Academy needs to give Best Picture to, honestly. Now, that being said, in terms of my favorite movies of 2020, I like The Invisible Man infinitely more than I do Mank. But the problem is that I don't know if the Academy is going to recognize The Invisible Man because they have such a disdain for horror for some reason. But if they go for Invisible Man, then awesome. If they don't, then Mank is my pick, and it's really about time the Academy gave David Fincher his due after they kind of screwed over The Social Network and gave that award to The King's Speech. So as for a rating, I would say this is absolutely worth seeing in your lifetime. It's well crafted in terms of its filmmaking. It has a very interesting structure in terms of how the story is told. And as the movie goes on, all the pieces start to get put together in a very nice way. And it's just a very great movie all around. I don't know if there's some people out there that are going to look at Mank and the way it's made as some sort of gimmick in the way that people criticize the artist for being a gimmick, which it's not. So that's going to be interesting to see, but for right now, I think this is one of the best movies of the year, and it's definitely worth checking out. And there you go, that's my review for Mank. Now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you, there's only one.